Hi guys, it's Chip Guardian. So this is the second part to the video. We are making World War II shepherd's pie. Well, it's actually, yeah, it's shepherd's pie because it's mincemeat. Cottage pie is with cubes of meat. But in World War II, all they had to put in was onions and mincemeat. Remember that they didn't have, they had plenty of vegetables, but like greens and stuff, but they didn't have a lot of butter or oil because it was all on rations. So they used to just do onion, and there's no garlic and seasonings. So they used to do mincemeat. This is what we're doing for the mukbang. We're going to be doing the original World War II shepherd's pie. So over here we've got the original Smash Get Smashed from Bachelors. We got an oxo cube because that's what they used to use a lot. This is the vegetable stock one, and this one is the oxo, the beef one. Okay, this is beef. Remember, they didn't have frozen food in 1974 when Iceland was the first, and Tesco's were the first to open and have frozen food. And we will be going hunting for 70s and 80s frozen food and try them and see if they still taste the same. Because I was a kid in the 90s, so yeah, like the pancakes and stuff in the UK. Apparently didn't taste that good, and lasagnas and stuff. But we'll be doing that. This mukbang, we are making shepherd's pie. So like I said, all they had was a few ingredients to go in the pie. So that's got a bit. So then what we do is, we add the oxo cubes next. Now remember, shepherd's pie used to be done at the end of the week. So that's what we're doing, a Saturday. It's the last of the meat because the rations started up on Monday. Every Monday. Certain areas had it Monday, Tuesday, so it wouldn't overwhelm the butcher or the grocer because they didn't have big superstores in those days. So to stop overwhelming the butcher, and normally there'll be a big queue still for the stuff. So there's now the oxo one. Hard to do it one-handed, but let's try. So that's what your flavours was. Bit of salt and that's it. Okay? I'd recommend you taste it before you put salt. Because if you put salt, excuse me, just let me wash my hands. If you put salt in, it could be very salty. Okay? So, sometimes they used to do fresh mash, but it became a bit expensive because all through the week they used to have lots of stuff with roast potatoes, boiled potatoes. Remember, the wife had to find ingredients and make it interesting from when the kids and the husband came home, and it was her place to fight in the kitchens and make sure her family had food. We'll also be doing an original World War II Sunday roast dinner. And guys, you'll be shocked at what we're going to eat, what we're going to do it, what they did. And some women had to do things for the butcher we all know. I'm not going to say in case there's kids watching the channel, but we all know. So that's what they do. Then they stick a bit of hot water, because they needed to make it last. So I'm doing this to the identical recipe of a housewife in World War II in London, in the UK. And this is the exact recipe, and this is supposed to feed 4 into that small thing there. See that small? That is really small, look, very small, right? And this meal had to feed 4. If you had any more kids, like 5 or 6 kids, then you're going to be pretty buggered. Because the kids used to get their rations as well, you see. But this meal is for a family of 4. A mum, dad, and 2 children. And did you know, guys, that in World War II, a lot of people put their dogs down, because they knew that the dogs would suffer, they would starve, because they stopped doing dog meat because they needed every bit of meat for horses. Like they used to do horses and that, and tinned meat. And that Spam actually comes from America, and the actual name Spam is suppressed American meat. Yes, believe it or not. So let me just put your seconds. Why do this bit? So yeah, it means suppressed American meat. And Spam became a big thing. We will be doing some Spam recipes. So this is what it looked like. Yeah. But it was very important to have this when you got your rations, very important, because you could do so much with it. There was powdered eggs and stuff like that, so we'll be getting powdered eggs and stuff. We'll be doing original recipes. Right, so here we go. So you couldn't have like butter in the mix. You couldn't have butter and stuff like that. That's not on. It's just that with a bit of boiled water. Make sure you don't put too much in, or you'll get it sloppy. And then you mix it. Remember, guys, you can always add, but you can't take away, okay? And it's going to go, and you're going to want it to soak the mash anyway. It's going to be soaking most of the juice of the... So you don't want to overdo it, because you want the mash to soak up some of the... See, normally you'd put pepper and butter and stuff, but they didn't have none of that. And I've gone and spilt it everywhere, look, because I'm doing it one-handed. Oi, oi, oi. I never do this one-handed. So you want to make sure it's mixed all properly, but you don't want to make it too loose, because like I said, you want it to soak. You can't put cheese in it, because cheese was such a commodity. You only got a certain amount of dairy stuff. You only got 1 egg, so it was pretty very plain. Okay, you can add salt, but again, salt was rationed as well, and sugar. So put a little bit of salt in, but remember, guys, everything else is going to be salty. Right, so turn that off, put that in. Hope I don't. We use every bit. I'm already spilling everything. Right. We use every bit. I'm going to have to put you guys down for this. Hold on. Right. So, let's see if I can get it on the kettle so you can see. Right. So, we use every bit we can. Because like I said, it's World War II. They didn't put vegetables in here because they wanted as much vegetables as they could get. So then we put the mash on top. Remember, I'm spilling it because I'm doing it one-handed, but hold on a minute, guys. Like I said, I'm spilling it because I'm doing it one-handed. So let's make sure we've got all the mash. So, the war started mid-March. By May 1940, we were in war with Germany. Right? So you've got to make sure it's all down because... So look. So that's it. So you've got to make sure it's all down. Remember, no cheese, no stuff like that. If you want the original recipe, you have to do it this way, okay? So, no cheese, no mash. Look, only a little bit of meat. More mash for filling and more greens and stuff. So once it's done, I'll take it out and then we'll have a mukbang of World War II. See you in a while, crocodile.
Attacks on Great Britain last night. The raids, which lasted for several hours, were scattered over many parts of the country, and enemy aircraft have been reported over towns on the south coast, the west of England, the North Midlands and the North West, as well as over the London area. There are reports from Germany that our bombers attacked industrial targets there. A bill to authorize President Roosevelt's lease and lend policy is to be introduced today in Congress.
Germany calling, one would describe as the height of cynicism. The message sent by the First Lord of the Admiralty to the House will be aware that the King of the Belgians yesterday sent a plenipotentiary to the German command asking for a suspension of arms on the Belgian. The British and French.
This is the British World War II radio stations. See you in a little while for the mukbang. Hi guys. So, sitting down. Hold on a minute. Can you see this is the shepherd's pie? Right, so we'll lift it up a bit so you can see me. That's it. Do you know what it smells like? You know when I was cooking it, what it smells like? You know, school, like in the 90s, I went to school and we had school dinners. That's what it smells like. So, we've got an original World War II dinner. Family size dinner for 4. We've got the cup of tea with no milk, because remember, milk was on ration as well. We've got browning gravy from literally World War II. And so, you see how I made the shepherd's pie at the beginning of the video. So let's take a piece. Remember that onions were very, very rare. So what they did was they encouraged people to eat and grow their vegetables. Now everyone who knows me knows I've got allotments. So the carrots and the sprouts are from my allotment. But they started telling people to change their gardens into allotments. I don't know how much I can eat of this, guys, because my stomach is really bad. So today we're in pain. I haven't been able to eat for a couple of days. So hopefully I can eat. So what they used to do was, as you can see, they used to have to feed 4, mum, dad, 2 children, but they used to put more vegetables on. Now a lot of people with shepherd's pie would have cheese on it, would have chips, would have Yorkshire puddings and stuff like that. But in World War Two, there'd be like, what? You want a bit of shepherd's pie? In World War Two, what? What are you looking at the shepherd? It's too hot for you yet. Wait till it cools down. You've got your chicken and pasta there. And in World War Two, they ate more. What? This is Guardian. What would you like? The shepherd's pie's too hot. It's just come out the oven. See? Just let me tell these about World War Two, Louis. Lie down. Relax. So, in World War Two, they filled up the plates with vegetables. You couldn't have cheese and stuff like that on other meals because, you know, if you wasted it on one meal, that was it, done for the week. You had rationing, so you, your partner, your husband, wife, whatever, and your children would all have a ration book, right? He knows I'm going to be in pain when I eat this, that's why he's trying to get me to avoid it. And then in your garden, the women would go out and get whatever vegetables there was. So apparently this is to the recipe to the T. Gravy granules, oxo cubes, the mash done with dried mash, you know, so sprouts and carrots will be the main staple. So it wasn't for Sunday dinner, it was the main staple. But nowadays you'd have Yorkshire puddings, you'd have cheese on it, you'd have fresh potatoes. But see, they ate a lot of potatoes in World War Two. And you can't beat fresh carrots and sprouts and so they had to sort of like, the mothers had to be geniuses in the kitchen. And that's where the carrot cake come from. Because they were on rations for sugar and sweets and stuff like that. Because in World War Two, 3 to 4 years, there was no sweets, no sugars. You'd be lucky to get a little tiny C3 bag of sugar. I will do the measurements and I will show you in the future. But you come home to 1 meal a day like this. And it'll always be at 4 o'clock on the table. And like in the morning you'd have powdered egg. When the war finished and eggs become plentiful, kids preferred the powdered egg because they got used to the taste and couldn't stomach real eggs. But to make cakes, they would use carrots, potatoes to bulk it up. And then the government in 1943 started saying to people, we'll give you seeds and you have to start growing your own fruit, vegetables, grow your own fruit trees. And there would be booklets on it. And if you were to waste one bit, like, you know how normally people would take the carrot out of the ground or you'd buy it and then you'd take the skin off, wouldn't you? You weren't allowed to do that. You weren't allowed to waste food. Like if they had green mouldy cheese, tough luck, chuck the cheese. And once a week you would be allowed, it'll tell you what day. Normally Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday was shopping days. And that's where you'd get your week shopping. And there was no money, it was all rationing. However, women in World War II had to feed their family. So they would either use their baking skills and bake like an apple pie or something like that, and take it down to the butchers or the farmer to get milk and eggs or whoever, and make something and swap it for some meat. Now this was highly illegal, and butchers, and there was no bakers, there was only butchers and greengrocers and shops were only allowed to sell what the government told them to sell. So in 1942, the government decided that women shouldn't smoke, so they could save all the cigarettes and the baccy for men. So they stopped the shops selling cigarettes. If you're a non-smoker, you won't understand. But can you imagine that you're being bombed on? You've built an Anderson shelter, you're being bombed on. You've got to struggle every day to find meals that's going to keep your family healthy and not to go undernourished and sick. You've got to listen to your babies having stomachache because they're starving when they go to bed. You've got to help with the war effort by going and doing work, like the younger ones went out and done work for like to build the bombs and stuff in the factories. And now the government's saying that's still not enough. You're working in the fields, trying to run a family on the pittance they give you. Plus you've got to grow your own vegetables, plus and fruit. Plus on top of that you've got to make healthy food for your family to keep them well and alive. Plus you've got to feed your husband, because if he's at home and he's not in the war, then he's doing something for the war effort. Women again had it bad. So the government stopped them selling cigarettes to women. Go on YouTube, go anywhere, documentaries, you'll see it. So not only did the women have to stress running a household with hardly anything, making sure how to make cakes and stuff like that, with making sure the husbands were fully fed, ready for work, for the war effort. The ones that stayed at home were either too old, too sick. Then they would go and work on the farms, or if they were poorly, they'd go into the dad's armies, do fire watch. So, like a meal like this, you wouldn't have bread and butter. I mean, bread and butter. Some children only had it like 3 times in a week, and they had bread, butter and jam, and that was their breakfast, dinner and tea. When the mum got a bit of cheese and she got the ration for the week for the whole family, each person would have a ration. So if you wanted a cheese on toast, that's your ration for the week. You don't eat nothing except vegetables. I mean, I was looking at ration books, and mincemeat was the most affordable thing you could get. And even the liver, the heart was all saved under the counter. Sausages, all saved under the counter. And a mother would walk in and say, right, I've got my 2 kids' ration books and my husband's ration books. We need 5 sausages, 4 sausages. And they'd be like, no, run out. Oh, some liver then. No, run out. What have you got? Well, we've got tripe, which is the stomach, but pretty much nothing else. Sorry, love. We've got mincemeat. So most of the women would get the mincemeat. However, some of the women would know their butcher, either know their wife or know their butcher. So if your butcher is getting paid by the government, and in return he can get the meats that's left, but legally he's not allowed to sell them, right? He would then say, well, my missus needs a charwoman to come in twice a week and clean, and I need my shirts ironing, because they both work, right? And then she'll say, okay, if I do that, remember that the mother can't work legally because she has to be at home to make sure she's running the house and make sure the blackouts are done, and she's running the home, remember? So they say, well, we could have a little bit of liver for you. And it started like that. And it's called the Cockney banter. And it still happens today. When I go to the market, we're bantering away. Oh, that's what for them carrots? What the bloody hell? Look at the state of them. I'll tell you what, I'll give you a pound, but then I want to throw some lamb in as well. Alright, but then you've got to buy these as well, lamb, because you can't get rid of them. I mean, if you wanted whiskey for your husband's sake, or wine, or anything like that, or petrol, so it was a very high price. Now, the Americans didn't start coming into the war till they were attacked by in Pearl Harbor, which was 1943. So, at this stage, since 1940, mid-May 1940, the United Kingdom was in a war. They've been bombed out for 3 years. They've been struggling to eat because the U-boats blew all our food sources and everything in the waters, and so we couldn't bring anything in from the water. So the only way we could do it was grow our own food. So for 3 years, no chocolate, no sweets, no fatty foods, no takeaways, nothing. No school dinners with milk or nothing. Whatever your mum could get is what was on your plate. And if you were a fussy kid, you'd die. I ain't joking with you, you would die. Sorry about that, guys. I had to put my tense machine on. So, what happened? Sorry about that. The tense machine's flicking my stomach. What happens is, when I go to eat, the muscles start to spasm and it's painful, and then it causes the stomach to go out of control. And have you ever had stomach cramps? Not what women have, like gastroenteritis? Imagine that with air pockets stuck. And as I said in my last videos, I can't release wind from my body, so it builds. So this helps. It does the job that my bowel should be doing, or my stomach, or whatever it is. So anyway, we were talking about World War II, right? So kids couldn't be fussy. They couldn't sit there and go, I want tomato sauce and only tomato sauce. Or I want only cakes or sweets, because there was none. Or bananas or chocolate. I don't want to eat this. I don't like jam, so I'm not eating jam. They couldn't. They had to eat what was given to them. They were so hungry that they would eat it. There's been a few documentaries that I've watched on how they bring people from this time and take them back in time and do an old house and take out all the amenities and put them in a 1940s house. I don't know if you've seen it or not. And they struggled. They really struggled. They argued with each other. They struggled. The children were starving. She was going to pull them out. They were taking their friends' packed lunches because they needed to eat. Because when they got home, they wouldn't have sweets and biscuits and chocolate. Now the reason why I want to do World War II is because a lot of people think that we're far from another war. That a third World War won't happen. But when you've got dictators like China and Russia, and they don't listen to the governments, and it's not like we're gonna sue China for their pandemics. We haven't sued China for their pandemics, their flus that they bring over, the SARS virus, mad cow disease, myxomatosis, all that lot. Because of their behaviour, and so far it's because of the way they eat according to the government, which I don't believe, but there you go. It spread too fast. Yeah, so just like nowadays, the scientists have realised that it wasn't the rats that caused the big pandemic and the plague. It wasn't the rats, it wasn't their fleas, it was actually the human fleas that spreaded the pandemic. When they were coming back from overseas, they had beards and hair, and they had lice. And it was actually the lice that spreaded the pandemic and killed. And it wasn't until a doctor figured it out and stopped the human contact in villages, where if villages would be having things delivered, they would have to use the water source in the village. So they would, if they were paying, say, someone to bring in some food from another village, they would have to put it in the water, and they'd have to put the money in the water, which now is the same as washing your hands. It's soap and washing your hands, and when you bring something home, wash it well, and, you know, and it stopped the pandemic. 5 years. It took them 5 years. So if you think about today's technology, a year and a half to find a vaccine isn't as fast as you think then, is it? If it only took, in the Black Ages, 5 years to figure it out and stop it, the pandemic, the plague, then a year and a half with the technology we've got is pretty slow, in my opinion anyway. So, yeah, so I wanted to do about World War II so we could see how lucky we still are. And make you aware that at any time we can go back to that. Because, see, we depend on other countries for stuff, like other countries depend on us. If they stop the waterways and they stop us getting in food or amenities, then we're a country on our own again. And we haven't got much land left because they're too busy building on it to house millions of people. Oh, let's get this old farm, let's take this green belt and make it brown belt and build on it. Hey baby. Right? So they, yeah. So that's what they did. And now we're building constant housing constantly on things instead of stopping people coming into this country until we can house everyone and see the state of our places. They're trying to push people out and push people up into pigeon huts. But again, if there's a war comes out, we'll be killed from the inside out. Because all I have to do is stop the food. Stop the deliveries coming in. And this is why I'm an avid supporter of our farmers doing their own stock, growing our fruit and veg, fishing in our waters. Because if there's a war, all they have to do is stop the ships coming in and bringing food in, and we're sodded. Now you might ask, well, how do you know that, Chip? Well, it's simple. I live on a farm. Just the farm's right next to me. You've seen it in the videos. When I talk to the farmers, they're still under the thumb of what they can and can't do. They had to kill, at the beginning of the pandemic, they had to kill thousands of milk cows. Why? Because they couldn't afford the feeds. Because everything went up because of Brexit. Now everyone's saying, oh, we should have stayed in, and no, we shouldn't have. Because to be fair, if a war does break out, everyone's going to be expecting us to go over to their countries to protect them and leave our country vulnerable again. And we'll have to follow their rules. And everyone knows what happened in World War II with France, don't they? And if you don't, go and find out what happened. To stop them smashing up the Eiffel Tower and killing Paris and burning it down, they moved out and let the Germans move in. And that move alone could have took us. But it was lucky we had smart generals that was autistic. Don't believe me? Look it up. The general that Winston Churchill put in place and done the strategic mover on the beaches of Normandy was a general with severe autism. And because Hitler was smart, he didn't think of that move because he was too busy. See, sometimes people think of something, but you need someone to think a different way to win. And he would have never known that all them on the beaches of Normandy, he said, they wouldn't dare cross that side because that side would wipe them up. They would have to go under the water and that. The only way they could get in is this side. So the general turned around and said, go put the blow-up tanks. Put a few soldiers, but fake, put everything fake up. So they built fake tanks, fake guns, fake people. And then when Hitler woke, he ordered everyone to go down and storm the beach of Normandy. But while they were still shooting at and beating up and whatever, the blow-up tanks and that, we were around the back and we'd surrounded them and come forward and pushed them down. They gave up. How do I know? Look in the documentaries. But I get worried about the next generation, the kids. Because they complain about everything. They don't know how lucky they've got it. They're in the middle of a pandemic and they can order a takeaway. They're in the middle of a pandemic and yeah, we're being locked down, but the government's still allowing us to have some kind of choice. Like, when we lock down, are we safe? Can we keep our families safe? Do you want to keep it safe? Are you going to break the rules? In World War II, there was no laws. You wasted food, you were put in prison. You showed a light, you were put in prison. Or if they didn't see it and you show a light, smoke or something like that, it's your fault that all your street has been bombed and people have died because you smoked and showed them a light for them to bomb us. It was so much worse in World War II than it was ever here. But they survived it. Why? Because they got together. They worked together, helped each other. When a neighbour's house was bombed, they didn't run into the rubble and steal all their rings and their family jewels. They actually helped them, and the neighbours would take them in and feed them and water them, and they'd live next door. And people would come and clean up and help them clean up and help them take as much as they could of their stuff to save their stuff. They were fighting fires. Normal, everyday people was helping the Dad's army and the other armies to fight fires. Could you safely say that that could happen today? If your house was bombed or anything like that, could you safely say that people would come and help you and not steal your jewellery, not steal what you've got, the food and stuff? Because they couldn't in those days. People hardly had anything. They'd have a tin of peaches. They would share it with their neighbours. Nowadays, they'd say, give me currency for it. 30,000, 40,000 pounds for a tin of peaches. How do I make money off it? Not how do I help my neighbour stay alive, because we're in a pandemic. And that's why I wanted to do this. I wanted to do this to make people aware of the generations before, how smart they were, how much harder they had it, how uncomfortable they were, how painful it was, how dangerous, and how much more locked down they were. Because while they were starving to death, Churchill and all the people around was drinking wine, champagne, smoking cigars, eating 3-course meals, bacon and eggs for breakfast. And the answer to that is, well, he was running the country. We needed to keep him healthy and feed up. And yet he was more unhealthy than the average Joe on the streets, because the average Joe on the streets had to eat small amounts. And there was no sugars and sweets and stuff, so there was no diabetes, there was no pains because they ate lots of fruit, so they had fibre. It's just hunger. But they got together and played and dug together and done the gardens together and stuff like that. We've got to think, is this pandemic all there is? Or is this just the start of an attack, a bigger attack? We're not going to find out straight away, but we will. Sooner than later, we will. We'll find out exactly what happened here. And all those people that says, oh, it's flu, it's nothing, people die of it all the time and stuff like that. You're going to be eating your words. Because for a start, it's nothing to do with the flu virus. The SARS and MERS virus was the flu virus. This is something entirely different. And instead of people saying, it's the flu, I'm not taking it, it's a normal pandemic, they should find out how it got here. Why it escaped, why it got here. And they should be protesting on the government to shut down the wet markets in China, if that's what they believe it really is, the wet market in China. Why aren't you all standing together? If you're going to put yourselves in danger, then why not stand together and demand the government to do something? People have lost their jobs. They've got no money. We're in debt of more than World War One and World War Two put together. Why? Because China's supposed to have opened the wet markets, but they've reopened them. It's the one it says it comes from is open. And instead, you're too busy bitching about the government locking us down again and bitching about how the government is telling us we've got to self-isolate for 14 days if you've got symptoms, blah, blah, blah. But you're not bitching about that they've allowed the wetlands to reopen. That's the real thing you should be running around saying. Well, if you do believe it comes from them markets, why the fuck haven't you told that government to shut it down? It's against the law. It's affected human nature. It's nearly wiped out the human race. And yet the government isn't doing anything. It knows it's open because the Sky and everyone, the news is showing it's open and trading. And our government, what are they, spineless cowards? He promised that he was like Churchill. He said, I'm like Churchill. The only thing, Boris Johnson, you are like Churchill is your weight. That's it. Churchill wouldn't stand there and let another country carry on doing this. Churchill would have gone after them and declared war. But you're not. You're sitting there. I'm not saying we want war. I'm sitting there saying, tell China to stop. Enough's enough. We're sick of it. I never leave my country. I haven't even got a passport. I stay in my country. And I'm supposed to be safe in my country. And yet I'm not. Because anyone who travels from another country into this country causes the pandemic. And I'm not bitching when I'm being told I've got to self-isolate. Am I bitching and protesting? Saying to the government, hold on a minute, why should I be locked down? And why should I be sick with this virus when I didn't bring it in here? I've never been abroad. I'm supposed to be safe here. This is my country. I was born, raised it, and I'll die here. You're supposed to keep me safe. But they're not. They're bitching about lockdown instead of bitching about shutting down the wet markets. Stopping the science labs, finding out the truth. What is the truth? What is the truth? Who's right? What's the truth? Because that's all we're asking for. Because in World War II, they knew the truth. Hitler wanted to take over humanity and make mankind into what he thought that's what he was meant to do. He wanted everyone else to not be able to read or write, and he wanted to tell them what to do, when to do it, and have his kids take over his legacy and become the only dictator in the world. How did that work for him? But I'm worried because this generation's too busy bitching about the little things, they're forgetting about the humongous things that are going on in front of their eyes. People are saying, I don't agree with them eating dogs and frying dogs. I don't agree with them eating bats and that. So what are you doing about it? Well, nothing. What can I do? Say something. Start a protest. I mean, millions of people can protest over something like a lockdown, storm London and everything. Why can't you do the same to get the government to do something about China? Do you want this to keep happening to your generation, your children, your grandchildren? Because if we don't stop it now, it will. And it's going to get worse. And one day it could wipe it all. And that's not why you have kids. You have kids so they have a better, bigger, more loving life than we do. A safer life. That's why we fight so hard. That's why people don't want to take the vaccine, because they don't trust the government. Which I agree with them. Why would you trust the government? They lie so much. But why accept that? Why not? Don't we stand up and put a government in that we know that we can trust? Well, we've got the power to do it. Look how many thousands and millions of people were walking through London to protest about lockdown. If we protest about getting rid of this government and get governments that know what they're bloody doing in, they would have to do something. No, The wet market's still open, they're still trading, the bats and that, laughing and joking. I've seen it on the news, laughing and joking and everything. And we're the ones still struggling, and people dying, committing suicide, people losing their jobs, people stuck indoors and it's still getting divorced and stuff because they can't take it no more. They can't take the lockdown no more. But this is going to keep happening unless we stop it. But if you can get millions of people to protest over lockdown, why the government should take our lockdown away, why aren't you protesting about why isn't the government doing something about the people who started this? Why aren't they investigating? Why aren't they shutting down the wet markets and making it illegal? Because you can't tell another country what to do unless it affects the humankind. If it's going to wipe out humankind, their behaviour, you have to stop it. Whether with a war, just like Hitler or Mussolini, or that's my opinion anyway. And every time I see thousands of people bitching about lockdown and doing millions of them going through London protesting, I don't understand. I want to say to them, why aren't you protesting to stop the wet market? Why aren't you protesting to get the government to stop China keep giving us these pandemics? Then we won't need lockdown. That's my opinion. And like I said, it's just one person's opinion. So I can't eat no more, guys. My stomach's really bad. Well, thank you for this. I hope you enjoyed World War II from this morning walking around, farming that. I will be doing another World War II meal soon. Thanks a lot, guys, for all your support. Thank you for the kind words of well wishes. Thank you for saying Guardian's cute, and he knows it. And if you like more content, then please press the button and put it on all. Don't forget, you have to use the bell. Don't forget to subscribe, share if you like. Put like or dislike and why you dislike and why you like what you like to see. Tell me if you want to see more. And like I said, it's still out there. If you want me to eat sprats, deep fried sprats, and that is the whole fish, then put it down in the subscription with a thumbs up and how many you think I should eat. Now remember, my stomach is only a 50p piece, so I can't eat much, but I'd say up to 5, okay, because I think they're about that big. So up to 5, little silver, whole fish, heads, tails, bodies, guts, poop, everything. 5 being the most, okay? If I can eat more on the day I will, but 5 being the most. Put your thumbs up and tell me if you want to see that. Let's go for it. Okay guys, so this is Chip Guardian's Adventures. Stay safe, think about what I've said a bit more, and please, please be kind to everyone. Just one person being kind to another is all we need to start a chain. Catch you in a while, crocodile.